If I was getting a machine, oh, perfect. Maybe don't show yourself. Like, set this like you can sit here, there, and you can sit on the floor here, and there's more on there. You can sit wherever you want. Okay, is everybody cozy? Can we start? Okay. All right. So, do you want to intro this?
Sure.
Oh.
You have it now in a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to have a second. I'll fix it. Let's make it try.
Hey guys, welcome to the Luxo Hub. If this is your first time here,
Yes.
welcome. We're happy to have you. We're happy to see you. Yes. So this is a newer space in Berlin for Web3, blockchain community in general, but also to artists and anyone that we like to call cultural engineers outside of Web3 as well. So a place where everyone can come and collaborate and learn more about blockchain, and you can learn more about what they're doing and their needs as well. If you're interested in co-working or using this as an event space, we have a QR code here for inquiries as well. And there's a few of us here on the site that you can talk to as well afterwards. And if anyone was here yesterday for our day on metadata, welcome back. That was really fun.
And whoever is in the back and wants to be more cozy, there's a whole left side on this room as well. Yourself down or here. You know, there's more space to sit.
Yeah, very cool. I hope you guys all enjoyed the brunch with Trinity this morning. I know it got a little hot in the room, but well cooling off from here.
And yeah, who was here yesterday? All right, okay. So we will do a little.
We'll do, yeah, today. Actually, first I want to get a gauge for who's technical in the room or considers themselves more technical. Cool, very cool. We'll do a range of technical to non-technical, and the really cool thing about mini apps is that in order to use them, you shouldn't be technical at all. And that's what we want to do here today, is make sure that we can understand what's happening under the hood, but then we also can talk about what we want and need and what our people's need to work, not technical artists, everyone across the board as well. So we'll start off with Fabia here showing us a little bit about Luxo, Universal Everything, Universal Profiles, what's a decentralized application, what are mini apps, and then how that works with Universal Everything on Luxo. And then we'll go into some awesome community presentations. There are many apps as well that they've done, and we'll show you some more use cases as well. And then we'll open up to a discussion as well. And for this whole time, if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to raise your hand. We want this to feel like an open conversation, collaboration. It's not just someone up here presenting and you're listening. We want you to be part of the presentation as well.
Yeah, the idea is to really like make it a bit of a open debate later, because we are kind of showing what's one way and one view into this new decentralized web can be. And if we have that easier access, that's also social, you know, what can we do with it? So the challenge, the balance between repeating myself and not repeating myself. So in a summary, so who heard about Luxo or who has not heard about Luxo yet? One person. Okay, who knows what Luxo is? I mean, besides you. Okay. All right. Okay. So Luxo is this network that's on the bottom. It's basically an Ethereum type network. In fact, the only Ethereum network that is exactly like Ethereum, without a change on the chain level, because the innovation are the standards. So we have something called Luxor Standard Proposals, or LSPs. A bit of a history. Back in the day, I proposed ERC20. I call it a Ethereum request for comment because the idea was we get comments in and then we debate. That turned into the actual name of standards, as we all now know. And so on Luxor, which is called the Luxor Standard Proposal, to be more clear what is on here. This is the standard proposal. And why do we do that? The challenge that we have in Ethereum is that basically, once you get the traction around a certain standard, then you're really like kind of stuck in trying to always be backwards compatible, because the moment there's a lot of people using it, you need to be backwards compatible, otherwise you're Luxor, to the outlier. To the outlier. And you might have it harder to get adoption on an existing network where people already have a token that's in ERC20, where other wallets work this certain way. The problem with that is, and we've seen it now, I mean, the proof is now 10 years plus Ethereum, where it's social, where it's the normal user, where it's mainstream adoption. And that's not to blame Ethereum or the whole blockchain space, because that's what we all were building for. It's when the foundations are set in a certain direction. So when, for example, the foundation is a token, then everything is a wallet, and then everything becomes about money and trading, right? So if we want to have a foundation that's more social, we need to have the foundation being a profile, not a wallet. And then how we make a profile happen, if you want to do this in Ethereum, I mean, there are tries to do that, right? So then there's the Gnosis Safe, which is a multi-sig, and then there's the idea to make this account system modular. And there's tries to get there, but it's a very slow, very incremental, very heavy debated and thing. And then people are already all convenient with their Uniswap trading exercises, so and lending and whatever else they do in DeFi. That you're basically trying to sell something to a crowd of people that came for a completely different purpose. In this case, it's trading, right? ERC20 is fall, ICO is fall, right? That's what we have in Ethereum. So if you really want to move blockchain to the mainstream, we need to really have a foundation. And if you want to do a different foundation that's not just a tiny incremental improvement, we then need to debate for many, many months in a smaller group of developers. Sometimes it's the right approach to step outside, basically cook like a chef. Go in your kitchen, cook the whole basic dinner, and then say, hey, look, this is how it could look like, and this is what we could do now with it. Because then we can try on a foundation that's actually thought out not only one piece for itself, but how all of these pieces could work really well together. And how can they be generic enough that they on the end really fulfill anything? And that has been a challenge. So Luxor is not here since yesterday. The idea was created in 2017. And in fact, the Luxor blockchain GmbH was founded in 2018.
Was that your ERC proposal? 725?
Yeah, ERC 725 was also 2017, exactly. So ERC 725 is a very fundamental part of all of this. So in a way, Luxor is born out of Ethereum, not only of the adopted the standard, but also it's born out of the Ethereum network, in fact. Because the Genesis validators were all a smart contract on Ethereum too. Like Ethereum was born out of Bitcoin, in case you guys don't know. There was an ICO, people sent Bitcoin to a certain address, and that was the ICO. So that's how Ethereum came to be. Luxor came to be out of Ethereum and literally works on that same technology. But the improvements are on the standard level. And the benefit is, if that works, if that gains traction and people realize this is a better foundation to build more social things, people will start to use it on other chains as well. So now we're contributing back with all that work to everyone's other networks as well. There is a benefit that you have on the Luxor network that you don't get anywhere else. You have an environment where you have only the new standards. So you don't need to build your app trying to be compatible to ERC20 and compatible to LSP7 and compatible to an EOA and compatible to a profile. You can build your experience truly just for profile and just for new token standards. That gives you reactivity and safer transfers and batch trend, everything built in, and metadata updates and all that good stuff. So in a nutshell, Luxo is Ethereum with new standards. If you want to translate it in simple terms, standards we mean smart contract standards, and in our case, metadata standards, because if you have the ability to attach arbitrary data, you need to standardize ideally what data you have and how it looks like. And then you have basically the foundational building blocks. But how do you make this easy accessible? And that's another challenge that we have worked with. We have the challenge of there's a lot of DApps, but they're really hard to find. And then you end up with like a few DApps being very popular, Uniswap, mostly STFI, some lending protocol. They are popular because there's money to be made, or you can either trade or whatever. And then every other DApp is hidden in DappRadar on 100 pages, right? Which probably have no users at all. Like after the first page is literally 0 users. From there on, or maybe a few more. If you remove all the DeFi stuff, you probably end up with very few users. And that's the problem, right? So we were thinking, like, how can we solve that? How can we make apps and protocols? Because in blockchain, it's all about the protocol, right? If we have standardized things sitting on a common database, which is what a blockchain is, how can we make protocols that people can now use, and how we make them accessible and findable? And that's where kind of universal everything comes in as a universal interface, or UI, which we are using this word since 100 years ago. Universal interface is basically the idea of creating an interface where ideally people can do whatever they want. And I mean, we all remember MySpace, and MySpace was kind of cool, like GeoCities, where people could build their own little kind of websites. And MySpace was cool because people could all go crazy and put kind of modules and then CSS the shit out of it and make it all ugly. So this is kind of like somewhat in the direction, with the difference that your profile is an actual smart contract account. So that means your profile does not exist in Universal Everything. It exists on the blockchain. Universal Everything just happened to be an interface to it. Right now, the most popular interface, around 20,000 visitors a month, and right now pretty hard to discover because you don't have a feed yet. But if you know some profiles and there's 30,000 of them, then you can do things. You can see what people.
Is there a benefit for being more discoverable by having a universal profile? Because you're saying, say you're embedding and aggregating across Twitter, your Scholar account or other profiles or widgets attached to that. Could there be a benefit to being more discoverable this way?
I mean, once we build a feed that will basically just read the blockchain's transaction. By the way, the second microphone, maybe you want to put that down there, or just in the middle, just on the floor. Then maybe there's some. It's not really like a boom mic to pick some from out there. I mean, the thing is, what we want to do is what's missing is you need to see what people do on chain, but that shouldn't look like Etherscan. It should look like what people do. Like, for example, if you join a DAO, it should say, hey, user so-and-so joined the DAO. And that means on chain, he probably bought a token or pressed the claim button or called a protocol, join membership or whatever he did. And you want to translate this to the people that they know what they're doing. And because the possibilities of what people can do on chain is endless, we're currently working on a system to make this kind of generically decodable. So we can easily build like a little kind of UI element. So on the end, what you want is you want to basically see, okay, people do this. I mean, if you see what people do on chain, what they do because it's all profiles, they always have a face. Maybe they don't have a face. You don't need to have a face, by the way. You can also look like, Louis here, for example, you can identify Louis, but there's a bunch of profiles. And that's how our feed looks right now. You can see that Jonathan just tested some mini apps before, but apart from that, sometimes you just don't really know what's happening. Okay, somebody deposited some validators just now, a bunch of them, actually. But you could also look like Goofy, right? Rando follows a bunch of people that we don't know, but he looks like a dog.
I love his hands.
Good hair too. Very handsome. And there's 38 other profiles that follow him, so he means to be a popular dog. It's a popular dog. Yeah. Seems to be a famous dog. And then he has music. Oh, yeah, radio. So this is the kind of like the idea. So what happens here is one thing is, you know, you want to have identifiable people or entities, whatever they are, because then social is like the default. But then you also want that people ideally can do anything, right? Because otherwise it's like now whatever we build in this front end is the limit. And that's the idea of where mini apps come in. And the idea actually started last year in August. In fact, it was my mom who probably did it to this idea. Funny enough. That's something that really like I don't know. She said something like, "What can I do with this? You know, like, what can I do with this profile?" And then I was thinking, yeah, but how could we make this? You know, how could I easily do something? And the idea is really the grid. We call this the grid, and the grid is nothing else than boxes where you can load websites in, or you know, put a text, and there could be different kind of widgets, whatever. And there's widgets like Spotify, for example. And this way you can kind of completely create your own like profile page. But what makes this powerful is not only that it's decentralized, because this grid is nothing else than a JSON document on Logstore. In this case, it looks like this. This is here my smartphone address, my profile, and then the actual grid profile JSON looks just simply like this. You have just a JSON file that says LSP28 grid, the name of the grid, and now I. This is
because you get too technical and then kind of.
yeah, this is funny.
Now we're very meta. You see the bronze monkey?
So, yeah, so it's basically just, and obviously we could standardize more and more and more, and then some websites can show some of these grid elements in whatever way they want, or they maybe don't show them if they don't understand them. But there's this power in the internet called an iframe, and in the past you could load any website in an iframe. Nowadays you can't, so websites they have to choose if they want to be loaded in an iframe, and some can't load in an iframe. But if they do, you can put them in the grid. So it means you could put your personal website, or you could put parts of your personal website in your grid. And it's all day about it. We can exactly do that. So
You have a question over here? Do you have a question over here?
yeah.
Can I put arbitrary HTML?
Yeah, any website.
So, like, actually, in the site, the link and already posted somewhere, but can I make my own HTML string?
Embedded like.
No. I mean, we could standardize it, but then writing code in this app would not be that great. That's a more secure issue. The nice thing about iframes is that they're really powered, like isolate.
Here's
So-
the question.
So the question is, could you just like write HTML directly into here? In one of these boxes, then yeah, the answer is no. Security reasons.
You self-host the front end and like modify.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is because you can read the profile. Those get too technical. Can you please, can someone give me a perspective? Oh wait, maybe this is probably not, but I don't think it's okay. Can you just plug it in there?
I think maybe turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I also want
It
to say.
just sounds super
It's
choppy.
just a bit short.
This
Okay, we have one.
with auto adjust.
Yeah, I think it messes it up.
Yeah, this, we have this in its
Choppy.
no, they are too short. Jonathan, they're too short. We need the long one that we actually purchased. So, okay, yeah.
I know. I think we got it. Oopsies.
Okay. I
Yeah,
can, I
you
can,
can exchange,
I
you
can,
can change it.
I can move
If this
my-
one is longer, I don't think you need the longer one.
No, I can take from you over here. We do it, yeah. Great. You wanna sit here and then you can. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, actually.
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
he's good with adjusting.
We will solve it the whole way. Yo.
Boom. And then I just
Okay,
need your
you
slide.
see it. So. Yeah. So now, but this is a really strange bug. And it's for me a mystery of how it's canceling both the stream and the sharing at the same time.
It's really weird. But then you have to be settings and that as soon as the computer sleeps, the screen comes off, the sharing.
Okay, is it on? We're good?
Mhm.
Cool. It's faster now.
Yeah.
Now we're hardware bound. Okay, so yeah, the point is, your profile itself is just a smart contract. It references anything you want. In our case, the profile data is just a JSON file. The grid, it's just a JSON file. So any UI could now show that same profile with the same grid, and they could design whatever website they want. They don't even need to have our code for it because it's really simple to just read out these JSON files and construct your own whole thing.
But for example, the YouTube is a specific URL, so I will not be able to search something else in this window.
Let's go to this guy and figure out exactly what his grid looks like. So if we go to this man here, and we look at his LP3 profile, then the first box should be that YouTube, which in this case, oh, that's the grid. The first one is just YouTube no cookie com embed, which is an iframe.
Okay.
It's just an iframe with
That means the only thing that I can do is play the video that I passed it.
in this case, it's like
So if you click on Luxo, for example, on the Luxo symbol up on the left, like in the same frame,
the symbol.
yeah, it's inside of the YouTube.
So this here.
No.
Yes.
In this one, yeah.
In the iframe.
In this iframe.
Yeah.
The Luxo, it's a Luxo, or at YouTube.
Yeah, it will open.
I will. Okay.
Yeah. So what you can also do, there's a button here. You can say full screen.
Yeah, I just wanted to find our basic.
And you can also open in a new tab, which then actually you have the whole embed directly. No,
USB-C button.
yeah, that doesn't work with this device.
Yeah, we're good.
Cool. Okay. Anyway, it works now. So, but like the point is actually to get to the actual point we want to talk about. Why is it called PDF? So the other thing, the other problem we have in Web3 is, I go and find a DF, and now I need to connect to those DFs, right? I mean, number one, I need to find it. Number two, I need to have the gas token, which is already the biggest problem. And number three, I need to then connect to this. So it's not a very seamless experience. And obviously, I'm in a separate page. So going from one big app to another big app to another big app, that's the way we would need to interact with protocols right now. And that's obviously not very fluid or seamless. And now protocols need to be this monolithic, to give you everything. They give you their own profile page, they give you their own this and their own discovery. Everybody needs to basically recreate everything over and over again. Right? And the concept of a mini app means that the app should only really focus on to what it cares about. For example, if I want to make a token sale mini app, if I would make this as a real app, I would make like project pages and discovery and everything else and build the smart contracts to sell it and build so much stuff. If you do it as a mini app, all you need to do is a tiny app with like a buy button, an amount you can fill in, and that's it. That could be the whole token cell mini app. Maybe obviously a configure. So if you set it up on your profile, you want to say how much and which token, what duration, whatever. But when it's live, it's just probably a button. Say buy or not buy, or buy or don't click button, right? So you can simplify the whole UI. With all the data on chain, everybody lives in that app already too. The whole activity is in every app at the same time. So it's more the competition about features, looks, and feel and UX. With all the data on chain, everybody. Right now, we're obviously very ahead of the curve, that we invented most of this stuff. But it also took a while. So
But we have applications on the network, full scale applications outside.
Yeah, Ario's tied to this
Yeah,
camera.
you log into the profile, post in
It's fine.
your avatar.
What if it overheats again?
your followers, et cetera. And if they wanted to pull in all this Web 2, Web 3 mini apps.
I'm not gonna record on it,
Yeah.
so maybe that will help.
Or you can even have like a universal profile, create whatever pages and still be able to.
yeah, I mean, you can actually make crazy multi-dimensional layers. You could have literally a mini app that. So I want to explain about the UP provider, how that works. So in Ethereum, we have this thing. I mean, this is just the mini version of what you just saw, right? We have our main app, we have mini apps, and then we have the app that controls the profile right now. It's in this case my browser extension. And in Ethereum, we have something called the EIP 1193 provider, which also one of these things that I have to standardize to. Funny enough, but or at least I wrote the first proposal for that, moving away from the Web3 provider to this thing. And it's basically just saying, okay, I mean, in this case, this is before that newer proposal that we have right now, where the controller app just injects an object. Most it's called window.ethereum. And that's the one that allows you to talk to the apps, right? And that's called 1192. They at some points, standardize this thing. And so this is kind of like commonly how every DApp talks to the blockchain. And then Wallet Connect does the same thing. Wallet Connect just creates part of a QR code in a server infrastructure, but on the end they use the same provider object that can work in Web3.js, EtherJet, EM, and all of those. So what we basically did, we just created a provider called UP Provider. If you load that library, which is just the same kind of object that you get back that you can just pass into VM and wherever else. If you load that into your DApp, and you could just take any DApp, obviously right now it needs to be Luxor because your profile sits on Luxor. But you take any DApp that interacts with the Luxor blockchain and you load that UP Provider, then UP Provider is small enough to talk to its parent frame and figure out if it's currently sitting within Universal Everything or another page that supports that UP Provider on the other side. And if it does, it basically auto connects. And it doesn't auto connect, but it like talks to it. So normally in DApps, we have this thing where you click a connect button and then it pops up MetaMask and then the user needs to confirm. So obviously if every mini app on a user's profile could be doing that, then every profile you visit is jump. You get pop-ups, like crazy, right? So that's why the window, the request account in our case is not working. You basically get a DApp, and that's really the only difference. You need to just wait for the account to change. Because when the user comes along and he sees, okay, this is the cool mini app and I like it, and he presses the connect button, now he chooses to connect to this mini app, and now basically he's connected. So the DApp just listens to the account change event, and he gets the address. And now he can basically just say, send from this blah, 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 standard transaction request, and it will work. But that's one more even more powerful thing in this UP Provider. The UP Provider doesn't only give you the account that the user connected with, which is in this case, obviously, my profile. But this UP Provider also gives you something that we call context accounts. And the context account in our interface is the profile under which this mini app lives. So that means your DApp gets actually two addresses. One of the user that connected, which you can ask him to make transactions, and the other is the address under which profile it is hosted. If someone builds another app that has multiple somehow context accounts, then obviously there would be multiple. In our case, just our profile. And because again, your Universal Profile is able to hold data, now that mini app can read information from the account under which it's hosted. And for example, have a config file stored there that says, oh, if I'm showing under this profile, that's my configuration. I need to use this token for the token cell mini app with this bonding curve and blah, whatever, And then it displays the interface according to that profile's configuration file. There could be just another JSON file IPFS reference from your profile. So this way, if you take the same mini app and you come across different profiles, they all might, be differently configured based on what the profile wanted to store. And all of that is fully decentralized, like the whole thing. Like if your mini app doesn't need any server and it's hosted on IPFS, the database, if you will, would be your context profile, or whatever standard somebody comes up with, how to store that. And that just makes, like for the first time, kind of you get two users at the same time, if you will. Like you have a DApp where you instantly have like kind of two people or two parties. You could somehow relate, right? The hosting profile and the user who came across and just clicked the button. And that's kind of like, when you think about it, that labels a lot of new different things. And maybe we can actually debate or talk about it later. What could that be? If I have now this possibility, what could come out of it? What could people create from that? I mean, it opens just a lot of possibilities. So that's in very, very simple terms what this looks like. And in terms of flow, it just like does this. So the mini app just like sends a request to your parent provider and it sends it to the UP app. Which makes it so crazy is that inside your mini app, you would have another mini app that uses UP provider and another mini app using UP provider. So in the 5th level down mini app, if this mini app makes a transaction, it would be passing it down to all the outer one and popping up the transaction window. And like the benefit is that I can be also connected to the outer app using Wallet Connect. So now I don't need to Wallet Connect with every mini app. I just click send transaction, it goes up, down, and then the top one calls to Wallet Connect. So it's just like creates a multi-dimensional wormhole, if you will. A DF mini app wormhole.
But in a good way.
And I mean, wormhole is a good thing. It's complex. Okay, yeah. So what's possible with mini apps? So we will have now Jan first showcasing his art project, and I think then there is.
And we'll have Alex from year 1 showcasing as well.
And then we will run through some other mini apps. We have already run 3 hackathons. Hack the Quit, we called it. And I think there's now how many? I mean, which friends just presented like the good ones, not just the hackathons.
130 projects submitted, 30% farmers, and then their total 22 winners
In the last one, or
in all 3 levels.
okay.
Which were all like two.
Let's say there's around 40 mini apps that currently exist, or maybe more. So the biggest kind of like task on our end is obviously stability of apps and performance, and obviously discovery, right? Like there's already a community with lots of people, lots of apps, a lot of stuff. But if you don't really can easily find apps, if you don't know what they do all day long, then right now Twitter is our discovery mode. You just search for Luxor, and there you see everybody going crazy with pink hoodies right now, pink baklavas. Yeah. So yeah, you want to show from here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
this is Jan. He is one of our artists with Refraction DAO. And he fantastically, you can see his work over there in our abstracted parameters gallery with Refraction DAO. And he also created a mini app, which he'll present now as well.
Sure.
So go ahead and if you want to put it over.
Yeah, it's like this.
And if you want to give yourself, is there anything else?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. There was already a lot of food for thought again. So my name is Jan Ove Hennig. I'm a sound artist, and originally I come more from like a traditional music making background, but over the past decades I got kind of sucked into the art world. And like my bread and butter is exhibiting, building installations, and I'm always interested in new technology, or in general in kind of the first step for me is always, to look at material and to be inspired by it. So depending on the job, it could be if I get commissioned to do work at the Gothic church, I look at the space and I look at, let's say, certain parameters that are kind of defined by the project. And I might be interested in stepper motors, and then I look at creative applications. This was kind of like the initial stage for me also working on this project, that I really wanted to understand the whole concept of the universal profile, and especially the standards. This was something I was quite inspired by. Since it's already a while since I've finished this project and my head's in a completely different space, I actually have to go off some notes here. So, but I just wanted to maybe kind of start you off coming from the core idea. And so the call was called abstracted parameters. And this is something that speaks to me very much because I often work from symbolic data, and then I look for ways how to sonify this or how to make it into something more tangible. So in this case, actually, the idea was to sonify the assets attached to a universal profile, so that each asset's address would become kind of like a musical, like a sonic signature. This was kind of like my my assumption that this could be something that would be worth exploring. You know, it's always kind of like I'm starting with a hypothesis, and then along the way, I realize some of these ideas don't work, and I have to course correct. But actually, in this case, it worked very well. That essentially this approach, I realized this approach creates kind of like a sonic fingerprint during the kind of development stage. And listening to a lot of the data coming from these universal profiles, after a while, I could identify which they were attached to. And this is something I find very fascinating about sound, or this is kind of what drives me also in my work, that the ear is one of our most sensitive organs, you know, like the eye is really easy to trick. You take 24 images and you think it's moving. But with the ear, you need at least 44,100 samples per second to give the illusion of sound. And you're really, the ear is very discerning. It's one of our oldest senses that we require for survival. You know, back when there was like a mammoth stampede, you know, this was vital information. It's the only sense that could wake you up out of your sleep.
And I learned the other day, it's the first organ that develops.
There you go. There you go. So that's also, I think, why sound has this power to take you back to a certain place. When you heard a certain piece of music or like a timbre or something, it can really transport you back. I think the second sense only that has this power is smell. So that's why I'm always very fascinated with the power of sound. And I'm also very interested in creating art that has a certain longevity. So if you're aware of kind of digital media, how fast this can deteriorate, or how easy it is to lose the ability to actually play back like a digital asset. You know, this is a real issue actually for the movie industry, where, you know, we went through so many different file standards. So some of these archivists, they have the problem that they need to put the playback device together with the actual media, so that they're able to actually play back sometime in the future. So this is also something that drives my work very much, which is why the whole project is actually running in the browser in real time. So there's no kind of pre-rendered base. This is often, I think, an issue when it comes to sound, that it kind of is rooted in this paradigm that you record something and then you play it back, but this is actually created in real time. So there were a couple of technical limitations there, but first of all, the initial process was really understanding how these standards work. So I wrote everything in JavaScript, and so the first idea was really to retrieve assets from a universal profile. So you can see the string on the top there. This is actually a contract, a wallet address, and then underneath you can see the assets attached to this. And this was already quite complex because I can't use any library. Everything is kind of custom made. So I had to make all these calls to the blockchain, and it was super difficult to actually get any readable data.
Did you use ES7.5.js?
Yes.
Okay.
So actually also like some of your team was really helpful, kind of pointing me in the right way. But this was kind of like my first success that I had. I was able to input a wallet or like an ID, and then I would see in sequential order the different assets associated with this particular account.
I mean, maybe I want to add to that ties into a standard. In Luxor, we have a standard called LSP5, and that actually standardizes how you reference assets that you own.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have other standards, so when a token is being sent to you, it actually talks to your profile. And your token smart contract actually then writes these asset addresses into its own smart contract. And the benefit of this is that you basically now have all the tokens you ever received written in your own smart contract, all the token contract addresses, which creates a decentralized portfolio, if you will, on chain. And this came out of this idea is, imagine, like, 5 years down the road, I remember maybe my name, and it's tied to the universal name system, right? And I know the name, and I have a way to recover it. I would ideally want to be able to get everything back just from reading from my smart contract, right? I want to now know which controller keys I have, how I control it. I want to know all the assets I have. Imagine all the decentralized servers are down and only the decentralized network exists, right? That should be possible. So yeah, your current universal receiver basically writes all the token addresses decentralized in its own profile, smart contract storage. And that's what he was then reading out.
Exactly, that's LSP5 right there.
Yeah, LSP5, exactly.
All right, so this was kind of, Maybe I just take it. Oops. I just
your assets in, and people think it's a bug in MetaMask, but no, it's like an issue with the standards on Ethereum.
Yeah. That people don't see their tokens. I mean, MetaMask could, and they do scan tokens, but then certain tokens are not scanned if they're not listed somewhere. So you always have an issue that your tokens might not show up if they're not very popular tokens. And you needed to import them manually into the actual front end. And this is an on-chain, automated on-chain solution to that problem. Yeah.
Better wallets like Ethereum, for example, if the indexes of portfolio, even if you don't have tokens manually, it also shows you the portfolio multi-chain and only DNS.
Yes. So if you have a server backend, you can do everything. Like if you have a centralized setup, you can always do everything. That's that. But the idea is, okay, if we have to rely on that one service, that if that goes down, now you don't know anymore what you have.
So you want to have one contract, it's multi-chain, that indexes and stores all the assets that you ever whitelisted for your portfolio.
No. So in a universal profile, I mean, okay, the question is, do you want to have a contract on chain that like stores? So this is not necessarily about cross chain. This is per chain.
You usually retrieve everything from your C20 nodes, for example.
I know. Yeah, you can do all. It's not that it was not possible, but it's not decentralized. So if you write the addresses of assets received and automatically, because of on-chain automations, into your own profile, it's obviously about that network where that profile sits on. It's not about any other network. It's only that network. But you are not relying ever on a centralized indexer that now knows your stuff. And it's more about creating a decentralized infrastructure. It's not that it's not possible. You can build a wallet, you can index tag out of it, like it's not that you couldn't know it and that you cannot create a better user experience. As long as you have your new middleman, you can always do that. But we are working on foundational pieces that should solve problem on a foundational level in the most decentralized way possible. That's why that approach. And by the way, it's also a choice. You can change your universal receiver and don't write that data into your profile. You're not forced to. It's just our default universal receiver 2 does that right now for convenience reasons. And it allows us to display all your tokens without, actually we have an indexer, but you can just like read it from chain. So the contract is your smart contract profile. So your smart contract account is a smart contract.
So you store it within the storage of the smart contract.
Yeah. The addresses. So you have all, I can show this after actually, but yeah.
I think it's a good example of LSP5, what you can do with it, right? I mean, this was for me what started everything off, that I realized there's one central repository where I can retrieve this data.
Yeah, I mean, but he's correct. You could do it also in a server, obviously.
More gas efficient because you don't have to reduce the storage.
Yeah. That's true, yeah.
All right, so this was the first step. Once I got the assets, the next step was actually work on the sonification process. And this is more or less where the meat and bone of the whole artistic kind of practice comes into, because you have to experiment a lot. So I try to find ways how to have certain aspects of the sonification attached to the wallet itself. And then obviously I wanted to also use the individual assets to kind of showcase kind of like a sequential kind of order of these assets, so that we can kind of create a melody or like a kind of something that you can latch onto that tells a story. So this is what I call the meta-sonification, where I'm actually taking all the assets and create kind of like a kind of checksum at first, which then defines kind of like the foundational principles of the piece. So you can see, for instance, here, there's certain modes attached to it. So that's like a musical scale, so to speak, root, tempo. So there's certain kind of areas that I limit the whole composition by. I really want to make sure that it should never sound arbitrary, but there is an underlying logic to it. So this kind of, we get into the area of generative composition. That's a thing since the 50s, and kind of that's also like some of the, you want to do it exactly, yeah. John Cage would be proud of you. You know, this is a perfect moment. So this is kind of like, kind of the framework of everything. And now we're getting to the next layer, which is actually the asset sonification. So this is where I take every contract that the profile interacted with, and this is where I actually turn it into musical information that is kind of framed by the meta sonification that I performed earlier. And this is really where I spend the most time fine-tuning, you know, generating these artworks and then listening back and kind of retuning it and reconfiguring it until I have like a machine that outputs something that is always based on my sensibility, so to speak, that has my musical signature in there somehow. And once this was done, then the next layer was actually to have a playback engine that would always kind of recreate this information that we're still dealing with symbolic data, right? So this is still very abstract. And now to actually turn it into sound, this is also another area where I'm, it's very crucial to find the right timbres and the right tones. So I actually wrote a whole synthesizer within JavaScript that is playing back this information every time. And whenever you actually change, whenever there's a new asset attached to your universal profile, everything always changes. It's kind of perpetually being revised, and there's always something to come back to. And I thought it might be nice. Actually, I have like a little reel where I show the sonifications of 3 different profiles. The thing is that if they're rendered out, they never look as good as when they're actually running live in Chrome. So I'll encourage you, if you want, it's the easiest way to do is to go to my profile and then just clone it from there, and it automatically associates with your address. And
yeah,
then,
and this is again a good example of the context account.
Exactly, yeah.
Because your mini app obviously has the context account under which profile it is. So means you basically just clone that mini app and you would instantly have the sound of your profile.
Exactly, yeah, that's true. And since I don't write to it, you don't even have to connect it. Just
you
by
just read.
just
Exactly.
cloning it does the job. So do you know if we actually have sound coming from here?
Yeah, it should play.
All right, sorry, just one last thing, just a mapping example. I wanted to give you a breakdown. So there you see a contract address, and there you can see how I'm actually breaking down this very abstract symbolic data into individual aspects of the composition. And keep in mind, this is like a constant fine-tuning of all these parameters, and just like a small change can make everything fall apart. So it's very fragile, and it took a lot of iterations to really make it come alive, right? So you can see this is just very basic stuff like the pitch, dynamics, duration. Then I actually have the timbre, like the synthesizer is being manipulated in real time through the hashes. So it was very challenging to make it sound right, but I'm very happy with it, and I spend a lot of time with it, and I find it very soothing. So it's really something you can let play in the background while you're working, and it's just it's perfect for setting the mood. So
listen to your portfolio actually.
There you go.
Portfolio, not your...
And the thing is also, once you like it, you also have to accept the fact that it's not going to be there forever, because at some point when you change something, when you make a transaction, everything reconfigures. So this is something I'm always very fascinated by, because sound is a very intangible medium, right? So you can't put it on the wall. It's kind of moves through air and then it's gone. So this is kind of like maybe like a meta commentary on the nature of sound. So let's have a quick listen. That's not how it sounds.
That's how it sounds?
No. Hold on. There's a really weird buffering. Okay. So this is the account.
But without that scratch
Yeah.
noises, that's okay, without that scratchy noise.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. Let's see if we buffer it.
Did you load it from the internet or? No, I think this has to do with like where this. I'm not sure if this video is embedded. I think it's maybe
Should
buffer.
be.
Is it?
Well, at least I embedded it in the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not how it sounds.
Funny.
Yeah, that's
Probably like
the buffer is like the sample rate is.
I mean,
You want to
HDMI.
show it on the profile?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, then let's go to which profile?
Jan over Hennig. OVE. There we go.
Okay, let's see if the
All the way down.
Ah.
There we go.
Okay. I think you're not using the UP provider. No. Why would I need to connect? So you're a QuickBook. Maybe you're not using the UP provider because it was probably before.
Okay. All right. If you can click in the.
No, you're not using the UP provider.
Can you
Yeah.
click on the little red arrow there and then maybe just use test account data? Now it buffers. Now it goes to the. Can close this again a little minute. Yeah. Takes a moment.
This one.
There you go. And now if you click the play button, it should.
Okay.
There you go.
Is it because of the speed? No.
I think it might be the HDMI.
Okay.
Just imagine there's no buzzing and scratching, and you can just zone out to this all day. In the visualization, actually, each asset also represents one of these specters there, and this is like a three-dimensional object that moves. So you have different kind of rotations in the visual realm, but also the sonic realm. You can see, you can see which of the assets are being sonified.
I wanted to have also my profile.
Yeah. This is where it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you add the UP,
You can already
should
see this is the different gradient. This is attached to your account. There we go. That's you.
But I'm really confused.
This must be the HDMI.
Yeah, 1 second. This is super weird.
Yeah. So you need
Yeah.
to put it here.
Like, we're gonna
No,
take
no.
that profile.
But why would that which why that's so big?
So that's you now. It's Fabian.
So that's my
That's your sound. That's how you sound.
It's our 100 asset sound.
But that's 16. It always goes to the last 16, right?
Oh, the last 16.
Otherwise, it would be too arbitrary. So if you listen to this a few times, you also pick out like all the kind of aspects of your assets attached to you.
Oh, okay.
That's why it always constantly changes when you make a new transaction. And you can always see the contract.
This is my portfolio. Lovely portfolio I have here.
Yeah, this one is a bit
A sad portfolio. This is my sad portfolio that people give. So the portfolio looks actually like. So what we're listening to is, I guess, do you take any asset, right? Like.
It's LSP.
So I think the
7,
last
8.
ones. Yeah. So the last ones I received. No, recently I think 4-game winner was playing Mesh. Barbie and Bogle Stella. No, I think it's. No, I think the last ones that the Luxor OG NFT was definitely playing, and the test token that somebody just really sent me here, and this artwork that I purchased actually.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, and my Forever Moments was playing, and here's also a good example of you see the asset has a 404 because that IPFS where it was stored was probably not referencing it. And with these new token standards, if you're the creator or the owner of the contract, you can actually update metadata down the road. You can basically, fix your NFTs. Like I don't know who followed the Artifact drama, where Artifact had all of the assets stored on some kind of system that was shutting down, and all the clones lost their images. With this standard, they could have gone in and fixed it all in one go without trying to fix the endpoint, because they literally update the metadata. And then because you can put a key manager in front of your token, you could say, okay, only this can be added, or only this can be updated, or only until this point in time, or you can completely remove the access and now it can never be updated again. So you just have so many more flexibilities on those assets alone. And that's a whole nother story. But
maybe also to add to this, I think what's beautiful about the mini app is that you can constantly update the source that it's referencing to, and there's no kind of broken connection happening there.
If you implement the UP provider
Mhm.
into this mini app, then people can just clone it and it will play their music. You should totally do that one. It's easy.
So at
Because
the
right now it
moment,
was like people need to connect.
right. But at least you would still have your particular profile sonified. That would,
Yeah, if you clone it to your profile, you would get it
Right,
on your
right.
profile. And then
So-
everybody listens to yours and not theirs.
if they clone it from mine, it should show there.
Yeah, if I clone it to my profile,
Yes.
but if you visit my profile,
Mhm.
you would listen to my
I see your point.
because
All right.
the context account, you just add the UP provider,
Mhm.
and then you just listen to the upprovider.context account. That's the address you take.
I think I had some issues with this at first because I thought it was some
Yeah, because
iframe.
you made it probably in the early days.
Yeah, because there was like a security issue with iframe. I could not, but we have to kind of circle back on that because I want to
Yeah,
revise it.
Yeah, you should.
So there's one last slide if you want to actually kind of also add it to your account. Here's my profile. So you just, it's at the bottom, you clone it, and then you can listen to your own
Okay.
portfolio.
His profile actually is easier to reach with not the address, but with his profile link. That's easier to remember. What Jan H?
OVE?
And to download the app if you're here, it's on one of these. If you want to create your own.
Yeah, so
profile.
everybody on Universal's profiles has already a profile link.
Ah, I see.
So Jan Hövening,
Jan
and-
Overhennig at D7B9.
D7B9. And once we have UNS, there will be only Jan Overhenning if he's lucky enough to not get spotted before.
No, I'm the only one actually.
Yeah, no, but like you need to buy the name.
Right.
But we can reserve it for you.
Very good. All right. So yeah, please feel free to enjoy, experiment, and yeah, let me know if any questions or suggestions. This is definitely like, I think still a few revisions down the road.
Once you add the UP provider, I will add it to my profile.
Do it.
So you can listen always to my ever-changing portfolio and send me stuff into.
Do you have any plans to make the synthesizer modular?
It's actually modular already. Yeah.
But can you like rewire?
I mean,
That
everything.
would be a fun thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a question like how complex you want to make it, because at the moment it's like we have different oscillators going through envelopes, and then like I programmed a custom-made flanger for this and a reverb, like it's a convolution reverb. Yeah, that's no problem.
Like, if you had
No problem.
for the nerds, you had just a bunch of wires and you could plug in, it's like, I want to route,
I
this
think that-
asset to this filter that is now connected. Like you could,
Yeah.
You can make a whole DAW, digital audio workstation out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many possibilities with
And maybe
the
one also
platform.
tip for it, I would definitely make it not buffer automatically when it's loaded. I would make a start button, because otherwise when people visit profiles, your thing will already start fetching and everything. And I would rather make the user click a button before.
Before it starts buffering, because it takes about 30 seconds until it gets all the assets.
Yeah, but I would not do this on app loading,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody who now visits my profile, you would already start like loading the assets.
Right.
And that's just maybe the user doesn't want to make so many requests.
I see what you
want to
mean.
give them a start button.
Got it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so now with Alex, and you want to? Yes.
Because I don't have a.
Okay, then I will put it back into the Apple TV, and we hope it works. Which it might be this cable which is broken, man. I don't know. here, and this you need to hold this
Okay.
later. And do the streaming thing.
Mm-hmm.
Screen share. But it's really strange. Like, how can an HDMI cable distort the music like this?
I mean, maybe there's like something busted in the cable that's just.
Yeah, but like the picture looked perfect. So
Yeah.
And the only 24 images setting that sound is, this buffering, it could just be that the rate is not sufficient that you can pass through the cable.
But that's crazy.
Yeah, like the sample rate on one of the machines is like. Rather than.
Yep.
So I'll actually be showcasing both a mini app and how like it parallels a potential DApp that powers that mini app, so that you could also see how everything ties together. Can you hear me well?
Yeah,
Bring it closer.
Yeah, one second. Yeah, you can just. Yeah, put it there.
Yeah.
And you share your screen.
Yeah, I thought I did. It says.
Yeah, go. Yeah, you can go. Cool.
So we built a protocol. The year one built a protocol that enables you to get yourself a digital assistant that can help you automate responses to incoming transactions. So one thing you could do is you could automatically block assets, forward assets, take a percentage of an asset, send it somewhere else, or do really almost anything that can be.
Maybe we want to quickly before, like I think we need to for a second explain the universal receiver,
Okay.
because without that, this doesn't make much sense to people.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe as a quick explanation, every profile has a universal receiver function, because that is also one of these problems on Ethereum. Is like there is no standard way that you can inform a contract about ideally anything, but on Ethereum it's not even about the standards. So we didn't add that into ERC20 back in the day. We didn't add the ability to, I mean, obviously it was the first smart contract standard and there was no experience, there was no DeFi, there was nothing of that sort. So I was actually, and there was another proposal, there was 223, like the first alternative ERC20 proposal after ERC20, and was pretty recently coming after that. They added this on tokens receive function. And the idea is when you send an ERC20, you call on tokens received on the receiving contract if they have that function. And this way you can inform the recipient and the recipient could do something. That standard never got really popular. And then there was another one at 777, which does the same, which by the way, LuxE, the token on Ethereum, uses 777, not ERC20. And that's why the ICO worked, by the way, so well. That uses that standard. So, but yeah, this was actually the first thing that like I standardized because it was the simplest thing. That's why it's called LSP1, funny enough. It's just a universal receiver function. And that basically means that your universal profile contract has a universal receiver function that if you're an LSP7, like a token or an NFT, and you want to send an asset, you have to call that universal receiver function and you give it a type ID and data. So a type ID would be saying, I'm type ID LSP7, so I'm a token or I'm an NFT, and that's some data I want to send along. And that obviously that is standardized. And why is there a universal receiver? Because any protocol in the future should be able to come up with their own notification that they want to send to a profile. And this universal receiver could be implemented into any other contract. So any contract could be informed if needed. And now there's kind of like a universal hook. Let's call it a universal hook, right? That's what it is. And in our case, on a universal profile, that hook, the universal receiver, just fires an event, which is nice for like off-chain tracking and whatnot. But actually, your profile you can delegate this call to an external contract. And in fact, each type ID can be delegated to a separate external contract. And that allows you basically to create automations, which is what Alex did here. So the idea is you could literally now create a store where you can add those automations to your profile that when you get a token, I can do any of these 5 automations. When I get a follow, I can make these 5 automations. I could send you an NFT back. I could I don't know, give you a ticket, or I could make you part of my club, You could just automate all of these things on chain because it's a universal receiver, and you guys build a router system on top of our internal already standardized router system to be more fine-grained. And you can just plug that in. And yeah.
I also
That's a
ties in
pre-tag.
nicely to what Ian was demoing, because that's the default automation, tracking your assets. So whenever an asset is received, the LSP5 received assets standard tracks those assets. So that's the default automation on a universal profile, and we keep it. So we keep the
Yeah,
default.
you could replace it, right? You could remove that, but it's obviously useful.
So we started off with just 3 automations, but we're looking to open it up for everyone to contribute. And there will need to be some verifications to make sure that they're somewhat safe. And one of the automations I want to demo today, and we've built a mini app for it too, is tipping licks to an external wallet for every incoming licks transaction. So this can be like revenue sharing, or it can be you have a separate wallet that's like a savings account. So for every transaction you perform on chain, part of that transaction gets diverted to that savings account. So this is the dApp interface for everything, but then we also have the mini app interface. And so
you can look on your screen, it's easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So here I'm going to show you how you configure one of these. You could configure one of these mini apps through the mini app UI, but it ties back to the actual data that is also read by the dApp. So here I will need to configure first some permissions and then install the protocol, and I will be doing this through the mini app itself. So first I'm going to connect. Again, 1 click, super easy, because I'm already connected to the account through the Universal Everything UI. I'm going to sign a transaction, and this will extract like the controller that the browser is using, or the extension is using to do things with. Then I'm going to give permissions to the protocol to be able to replace the default universal receiver delegate.
Can you scroll down? It's there,
I will on the next
fine.
ones. Okay, and now I'm going to install the
red
protocol.
buttons make it feel safe.
They're actually orange.
Yeah,
exactly. They're actually orange.
Nothing will happen.
Yeah,
Nothing
no.
will go wrong.
They're orange, but they look red. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
here,
I mean, I want to add to this also.
Yeah.
Here is setting data keys, right? He's setting actually the universal receiver delegate, and obviously, it's up to us to make sure that these user interfaces are more user friendly, right? Because obviously, LSP1 universal receiver delegate doesn't say nothing to no one.
but it's already better than
URD.
than bytes.
Are you replacing the delegate like for the entire profile? Or
Yeah.
are you just adding a delegate for like certain functions?
I'm replacing it for the entire profile so that it can be a modular system where for each type ID you could have multiple automations.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd be limited to 1 automation per type.
ID. I mean, yeah, or have another contract per type ID that has multiple automations.
But this new like receiver delegate will still have all the fallback to
Yes,
the function.
exactly. It falls back to the
It
default.
doesn't break anything.
No, it should not. And, and we reviewed it. We got like a security check from XtraP, so they said that aspect of it is all good. We'll yeah, we have some things.
But on the end, it doesn't really like what it does. It really only does. I mean, in this case, it is authorized to act on your behalf.
Yeah.
Which is the tricky part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where you need to really trust the contract, because you literally not only add in this as the receiver who then acts on incoming stuff, but you literally also authorize him to then act as your profile to move the assets that you received, obviously not the receiver received, right? To do something with it.
Yeah, is that upgradable?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could the contracts are all like verified, open. Yeah, so
But you could also limit it one by one. You could basically say, okay, instead of the router, because right now I think you give the router the permission,
Mhm.
you could basically just say each of the modules you later install, or the reactor hook modules, or the how you call them,
Mhm.
those are the ones you basically give the permissions.
Okay,
Which you
I
should
have to-
anyway too.
I'll take a look at the architecture again. Maybe it can be improved a little
I
bit.
mean, for sure. And
Okay.
you want to always limit what another contract can do on your profile to the minimum necessary. I think right now there's this thing, because people are not really fully aware, that they say, "Oh, let me just ask for all permission."
So I think this permission.
Why not?
This permission, these permissions here, they're actually per this particular assistant.
Okay.
Yeah. So they are
So you
only
need
for
transfer lux in this case, obviously, because you
You're
don't need
tipping.
You don't need call. I'm not sure if you need call.
There's like another thing there where you're there's filtering that you can do. So I think that's why maybe we need call, but
Okay.
we'll also take a look. Okay, so you are giving an additional permission to this contract here, and that's why it's adding to the array of
Yeah,
permissions.
that would be hidden to the user in the future, because that is too technical.
Yeah.
Um,
Ideally, you could also display only what changed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because now you're having to override the array with the full same data, and it looks like you're creating 3 new permissions, but you're
Oh
only.
no, yeah, but that's not possible. You.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It gets to. I think.
Just this lot that you need
That
to
changed.
change, right? You don't need to repeat.
Yeah, but exactly. Yeah, you don't need to change. You can just have. I think that gets too detailed and too technical. But
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
they are using these standards in a more advanced way, as you see, which is actually great. And they were the first ones with the upgrade who actually have used our standards they actually have used the standards, because everything that people do with tokens on Luxo, this is not really not doing anything new, right? Besides what we do on Ethereum tokens and NFTs. Even though the token standards are different, but this is sophisticated usage.
Basically, we wanted to see how far we could push things, and it was fun. So, okay, so I'm gonna sign this, and now I'm ready to configure the actual assistant. So I put in a destination address and the percentage that I want to tip for all incoming Lix transactions to the profile. And now also back to the dApp. If I refresh this, you see the same UI, and here you're configuring it per type ID. So here it's receiving Lix, destination address, how much you're tipping. Here we know it's already for receiving Lix, so we eliminate this from the UI, but it gets configured in the
Yeah,
transaction.
which is also a good example of why a mini app is a mini app, right? You reduce the interface down to only what that user wants to do in that very moment of what the app is for, rather than trying to build a super complex monster, right?
So here I have another up that acts as a savings account. I'm going to add this destination address, and I'm going to say 10%. So for every Lix that I get incoming, 10% of it will get redirected to this savings account.
And also here, I want to, sorry to interject. I just
No
wanna,
problem, no
here-
problem.
I mean, here, for example, instead of even copying the address, if you use the indexer or later the name system, you can just type the name, right? You just, like even right now, every profile has
Yeah.
a name. It's a self-chosen name. You could just query the indexer and you can search for whatever name. You don't even need to remember addresses anymore.
Yeah. So you could we could modify this input field to easily just search names. So here, this is all key value store on the profile itself, and that's where the settings are stored for this assistant. So they're stored on this profile, and it's using it's specific to the dApp.
Yeah, we want to standardize, by the way, the way of how the apps can save configuration of the profile.
Yeah.
I come up with a standard, but yeah, we have an idea, but What if you have the multiple dApps of the same type on your grid? Then it gets a little complicated.
Yeah.
We need to figure that one out.
Okay. Yeah, so here now you see I'm continuously tipping 10% to this savings account. So whenever I get a Lix transaction, and so you see here now I have 0 Lix in this savings account, and I'm going to perform a trade on Universal Swaps, and you will see how 10% of the Lix I get will then get sent to the savings account. So I'll say I want to receive one Lix after this trade. I'm going to swap.
Spend that 1 million gas. They don't see it.
Okay, so transaction went through. Now go back here, you see 0.1 Lix, so that 10% of that one got sent through. And now I should have, you know, I had a little bit more Lix before, so that's why it's more than 0.9. But this is essentially what this is like. And other awesome thing to call out, whenever you connect to any dApp, you get the same profile information. So I pulled the name, I pulled the image out of the profile data, which is awesome. You don't need to recreate that functionality for a user to manage a profile on all dApps that you connect to. And if I refresh this as well, you will see my configurations in the dApp that they match what I configured through the mini app.
And maybe like the big deal here is none of that requires a database, right? It's just a blockchain in this case.
Yeah.
Like there's no database. I mean, in this case, I mean,
Yeah.
if you, for the index for name search, yes, you would have a database, but the configuration you store in the profile itself on chain, right? Or you're storing a JSON file, or you're writing this actually just in the bytes.
In bytes.
Okay, so it's literally fully on chain.
Yeah. Cool. Any questions or comments?
I mean, I think this is super cool because this is always kind of how I imagine the sort of LSP1 would work. But my question is like how, as this sort of, as LSP1 gets used more and more, so you have to overwrite the delegate, and then say someone else also has this plan. So like, do you think this router you made, like you can make it so that like multiple, because I think like now that you've done it, people are going to start realizing, oh, this is actually what you can do. And then so suddenly like, okay, I installed yours and install someone else's, and then everything breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will be a problem. So we do need a standard, but through like just building the first version of this, getting to a process of refining what that looks like, and eventually we'll propose something that maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we also have some ideas, and I know Ron is definitely interested in, wanted to make one as well. I mean, because this is one of these more powerful. Like this is the kind of stuff. This is a really. So this is the kind of stuff where, and where it explains why Luxor as a network needs to exist. Because every asset is this new token standard that informs every recipient, so means every profile, and every user. I mean, you can still use MetaMask, but 90% of the people have a profile. So now you get that environment where automations, you can literally build these automations, you can build protocols relying on those automations, knowing that profiles will be able to do this or receive that or whatever else. And that you can't replicate on an existing EVM chain.
It's just a network effect.
Yeah, the human effect. I know as a developer it's hard to think from that perspective, but it's like that's the biggest problem. Is not the technical hurdle here. Yeah. It's not that we couldn't do it technically. It's literally just that if you have already everybody doing it a certain way, they're not going to change, right? Like, and as long as they see it very powerful and very successful somewhere else, that's then when slowly the triple effect starts to happen. But you don't initiate it that way. You would just not do it ever. I mean, we're 10 years in Ethereum and we still haven't moved beyond ERC20, and that was 2015. You know, I mean, pretty much. So that's the proof of what I'm saying.
Yeah. So the limitation eventually will become how many of these automations you can have on your profile in terms of gas cost. But
yeah,
having a few, it's not
I mean, I think on the
end,
end there has to be, we discussed this.
Yeah.
I think there has to be this concept of, if you want to have complex automations, obviously the sender pays, right? So you want to pay them back. You know, I guess you want to, there should be some kind of refund mechanism so that that you're not ripping off the people who send you stuff, because otherwise nobody sends you things anymore. Like,
but it could be interesting in that some automations could act as like a deterrent from people to send you too many transactions.
You can make a spam miner.
Yeah.
Where you basically, like, you know, for all tokens that are sent on the spam list, you would just eat as much gas as you can to make it very uninteresting for you, for them to spam you.
An example on that part, another automation we have is like when you could make an incoming transaction refine something called the burned pix on Luxo.
Oh yeah.
And you could push how much gas it eats like really high, and that would basically deter everyone.
That would be the spam miner.
Yeah.
Burn pix spam refiner. Yeah.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
Spam would go from being an annoyance to like a cultural creative.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of more stuff built into the standards that will be taking a week to explain, but
because if you extend the gas, it will fill the block, and that it could create kind of denial of service of what transaction.
I mean, you need to do a lot to fill a block. But yeah, we have actually one project on Luxo that does exactly fill blocks all the time, and it's the burn
consistently. Yeah,
the burn pix is like a fractal generated NFT that literally generates a fractal on chain. That's a whole different. I'm not sure we want to get into that story right now.
It's too technical. Oh, to explain it well, it's technical, but it's a super fun project. We have people obsessed with it in this room. So,
I mean, me too. I mean, I'm a big holder. Because it's the only NFT. I mean, now we're getting. It's the only NFT. I mean, maybe you want to go to burnpix.com so that I can at least see it. So it's the only.
There might be an issue with that site at the moment, but we'll check it out. We'll check it out.
Yeah, so this is the only NFT that actually you could really call an NFT, because it is actually. So you see this animation up here, and you can't. Like, it's basically a fractal. So this was created by Peter Szilagyi, the Go Ethereum lead developer, and he created his only NFT on Luxo, given that it was a young chain, it was still possible. And if you look at this is like the top. There's over 1,000 of these burn picks. You can basically just mint your own, and then generate a fractal. And in order to make that fractal look detailed, you need to send refined transactions to it, because they're actually computed in the smart contract. And currently, the top one has used 2.6 trillion gas on Luxo, which means that this top picture on the left, and probably all on this whole page, have taken at least 10 to 30 days of the Luxo blockchain alone, every block full, only for itself. So call them in a Luxo historical, I don't know, an ordinal or whatever you want to call it. Like it's something that the moment the gas price goes higher, this will cost billions of dollars or millions of dollars, whatever it costs. Right now, it costs maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 to refine this. So there's people who farm this, like this man here, there in the back, and me sometimes if I have time. So 50% of the Luxo network right now is just doing this. So there's a whole community who just refines burn picks. And you could like use the universal receiver to make other people refine your burn picks when they send you money. They might not send you anything anymore though. Or you just like take a little tiny and you just iterate always 10.
Yeah.
Instead of like iterating thousands, you just make 10 iterations. And I wonder why it's like suddenly 100 gas more here and 100 gas. So if you're a popular person and you get a lot of transaction, that might be a good assistant to add. Yeah.
Cool.
One function that might be useful to add to Universal Receiver is some sort of escrow, where just the question is, one useful function to add could be some form of escrow. So I'm just thinking of like how you would onboard native users. One way you could do that is by sending people claim links, right?
Better as long as you don't lose them all at the same time.
Yeah, that's the trick.
You know, so and oh, you have a recovery system that can give you access back in whatever ways it works.
Mhm.
But the initial controller key is kind of important for the cross-chain thing.
Mm.
It's the only way you can prevent other people squatting your address, which would be obviously not good, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just thinking about how you could do mass onboarding where you allow people to create their profile from their phone number. So you could use like the OPRF network, the MPC network, to derive the key from the phone number and then onboard them to add security later, like add like hardware and stuff like that. Yeah. Because I think I could see it would require a little bit of work.
Well, actually, I don't know if people can hear your.
Yeah, it could be done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I do see like a lot of power in the profiles being something you can interact with. So you could do some sort of like political activism campaign. You create a profile for a candidate with a donate button or like a vote on issues button. You say, hey, candidate XYZ is running on this platform. We would love your support. Help us do this, respond to this thing that just happened, right? And these might be some interesting ways to bring the tech together with like clear calls to action.
Yeah, I mean, you could, for example, say, okay, if you follow me, I give you a token back, and that token is now a voting right in our new political party we just created. Right?
Yeah.
And now everybody who follows is literally immediately a party member.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
And then you need to do some additional action. Then you maybe get more higher ranking. I don't know. I mean, this is exactly kind of like that was the idea of like having this conversation. Now maybe we do a little bit of a. I don't know what time is it even. Maybe if everybody gets a drink, then we can have maybe a little bit of a conversation about like literally exactly those ideas, because with like this new infrastructure, like, there's just so many interesting things that could happen, and maybe you guys have some ideas on the other end where we want to talk about this, but I definitely need to have some water first. Yeah.